Well, welcome back everybody. Sitting in front of me is this little DLTX Model 72 carburetor. This is what I pulled off of that Unstyled A that we picked up a couple weeks ago. The person we bought it from told us that anytime he went to try to start it, he would turn the fuel on at the sediment bowl and the carburetor would just overflow very, very badly. And it was evident because on the tractor itself, looking at the exhaust pipe and then the muffler, you could just see where all of the fuel had drained down into the carburetor. And then anytime he had tried to start the tractor, turn the flywheel over, when the piston came forward, it just sprayed all of that fuel up and out of the combustion chamber and into the exhaust manifold and up into the exhaust pipe. And there's this dirty fuel spilling out everywhere, or evidence at least of dirty fuel having spilt out everywhere on the exhaust side of that tractor. So very evident that we had a problem with the carburetor. The Magneto, on the other hand, I think we had pretty good spark. And but just to check it, I brought it home. We'll throw it on the tester and we'll just verify that we've got good spark. But I'm not too concerned about this. The main thing in this video is going to be opening this up and looking inside of it. Obviously, the reason that the carburetor is overflowing is because the fuel isn't shutting off, like the float in the down inside of the bowl isn't coming up and it's not closing the needle in the seat to shut the fuel off and meter the amount of fuel that goes into the carburetor. So everything is just dumping straight from the tank and gravity's flowing and feeding and overcoming everything, and this fuel is dumping out everywhere. So it's obvious that that's the problem. But why is it happening? It's a possibility that we've got sand in there. The other possibility is we've got a hole in the float. We've just got a bad needle in the seat. The float could be set improperly. I don't know. But we'll go ahead and we'll take the float bowl off of this and we'll see what we find.
Oh, that wasn't even tight. I'm surprised that more fuel wasn't leaking. It's really clean in here. The threads on this carburetor look really good. I don't see any cracks. Lots of times you'll see cracks down in here, and I don't see any. Okay. Let's get the emulsion tube out. This is my favorite tool for getting the emulsion tube out. It does a really good job. It's just a slide hammer with a big screw on the end of it. So we'll take this screw. Oh, should have done this first, sorry. Got it. Okay. This is obviously new. It's been replaced. Try to salvage this gasket. I think it's still good. Let's get all these plugs out. I can tell that this carburetor's had a kit put in it really pretty recently, because everything is coming apart without giving me a fight. Oh, this is a piece of cake. This is my favorite screwdriver. I'm sure everybody out there has a favorite screwdriver or a favorite pair of pliers. But anyway, what's one tool you guys have? Your favorite tool, favorite crescent wrench, favorite whatever it may be. I'm curious to know what it is. Oh, come on. There. So it's spring loaded. That's what this cup right here covers. It covers this spring mechanism so that then when the choke is, right now the choke is off, and when you turn the choke on, this spring mechanism, if the engine is sucking fuel, it will pull, and it can actually open up that butterfly as needed, so that then it's not just completely shutting the air inlet off into the engine. So that's what this spring mechanism does. Okay, and with that, this carburetor is pretty much disassembled. Before I go and I put this in the ultrasonic cleaner to clean everything off, I am going to run some wire down through all of these passages and just make sure that everything is clear. Okay, you've seen me do this before on other videos, but this is probably the most important thing in my mind when you're cleaning out a carburetor, is making sure that all of these passageways are clear, because on this side you have your idle circuit where fuel is allowed to meter up and bypass the emulsion tube and go up past the idle adjust needle and through this tube and out here on the back side of the throttle blade. So this is your idle circuit on this side, and this is your load circuit here on this side, and this is what the needle that comes down through the load side, it is what controls how much fuel is allowed to go from the bowl down in and up through the center of the carburetor through the emulsion tube when the tractor is under load, when it needs a lot of fuel. So you've got to make sure that those two passageways are clear, specifically the idle passage, because it is a little bit more complicated. So just taking wire, oh, this is nice and clean. You should be able to see, if I stick this wire down in here, you should be able to see it down inside of this. If I can. Yeah, you can. I don't know if you can see it in there. Let me turn my light on, and then you might be able to come onto this back side of the camera. Okay, I'm going down in through this passageway right here, and you can see right down in here, there's your wire. So that's nice and clean. You also want to check this tube right here, and it should dump in right here. So this is the actual tube that goes down in through the bottom. Then you want to take this. You should be able to see your wire right down in here. See that? Nice and clean. And then down inside of this in that little chamber, there's another hole, and that little hole passes into, well, you can see it. Maybe you can see it down inside of here. So that basically shows how fuel gets, where am I at? Right here. From, this is where this little hole right here, because if I stick this down the idle passageway, so we're clear. So fuel can get from the float bowl through this little orifice, which is where the idle adjust needle sits, and it goes through here into this little chamber, into that little chamber, up this tube right here, bypassing, up this tube right here. See? Up this tube, and then from this area, it goes all the way back, and then it goes in right here. So that's where your idle, fuel dribbles out on the back side of the throttle cable. So that's all nice and clean. Now, this is a vent area, I believe. So we've got that clear. Down in here, we've got this one. Sorry, you probably can't see what I'm doing. Okay, that's nice and clean. This one goes down into the emulsion tube. It's a big hole. So it's clean. Yeah, everything on this carburetor is nice and clean. Obviously that's nice and clean, but we do want to make sure that nothing is clogged. Going down into there, yep, that's good and clean. I'm missing someplace. This chamber right here is a vent, and how do we get down into there? I thought that was, oh, it's right here, I think. No. Oh, it's this tube, hello. So this goes back to right here like I showed you. And also this goes back into that same spot. So air can vent down in through here, and then fuel is able to come in and out of the float bowl without causing any suction or vacuum. It's neutral pressure. So anyway, so when the Venturi wants to suck fuel in, it's not creating a vacuum here. Fuel and air can get into the float bowl to replace the quantity of fuel that's sucked out of the float bowl and into the engine. So all of those passageways are nice and clean. We're good there. Let's go ahead and put it in the cleaner now, the ultrasonic cleaner, and wash everything off. I'll have to do a video on my ultrasonic cleaner because it's kind of a handy tool for cleaning stuff like this. This is how I do it, and you can judge me and say whether I'm doing doing it in a good way or a bad way. I'll let you decide. Anyway, this is just Purple Power degreaser cleaner in this Ziploc bag. I use a Ziploc bag just so that then it kind of contains the mess. And I'll do that with everything. I'll kind of put it in a couple of different bags, and then I'll throw it in the ultrasonic cleaner. So, okay, I've got 3 bags in here with all the carburetor parts. I'm going to turn it on and set the timer, and we'll do its thing. Oh, I gotta flip it on. Okay, so I've got the temperature. If you can look down here, I've got the temperature set to 40 degrees Celsius. Right now it's at about 30 degrees, so it's just warm tap water. And then we'll do a 20-minute session on cleaning. Let's let it go. Okay, everything's done. I'll pull everything out, clean it off, or not clean it off. I'll pull everything out, wipe it off, rinse it off, just real quick, and then catch you up. Well, it did mess up the paint job a little bit. Took the paint off, but everything is nice and clean. I don't have any issues anywhere that I can see. All of these components cleaned up nicely. This, I thought, looked like it was a little crack, but it is not. I put it down in the water, and I'll show you. No bubbles. So I did a leak check on this. Nothing. So the float seems to be good. I should have checked the float level before I took everything apart, but oh well. But yeah, everything's nice and clean. But that's gonna do it for tonight. I'm gonna go inside, go to bed, and we'll pick this up in the morning. Well, not in the morning. I gotta go to work in the morning, but we'll pick it up tomorrow after I get home from work. Probably after I get the kids into bed. It'll be tomorrow night. Anyway, see ya. Well, guys, it's actually a couple of days later. I did come out the next night to put the carburetor back together, and then I realized that I needed to paint it. So, and it's ice cold outside, and it's like 30 degrees in my garage. That's like 35 degrees in my garage. So barely above freezing in my garage. But we're going through a cold spell right now, and so it is frigid outside. Anyway, so I had to heat my carburetor up so that I could paint it, and the paint would actually cure and dry. So I took the paint inside. I took the carburetor inside, turned my oven on to like 170 degrees, brought it up to temp, then I shut it off, and I put the carburetor inside the oven so that then it could get warm. And then I painted it, and then I put it back in the oven just to let it continue to dry. Obviously, the oven was off the whole time. My wife doesn't like when I do this because it makes the house smell like paint, but I think the smell of paint's kind of nice. Anyway, so I've got everything painted, put back together, or I've got everything painted. Now we can put everything back together. So I've got everything pretty much put back together. And one thing I didn't do when I took the carburetor apart was I didn't check the level of the float. And it's pretty obvious now why the tractor's been flooding. If you look here, that float should be more like that, and it's all the way out there. So basically this float was never shutting off because it was probably touching the top of this portion of the carburetor right here. And so it was never shutting off, and so yeah, obviously fuel is just going to be coming in and bypassing and just flooding into the carburetor and into the engine. So anyway, so yeah, should be 3/8 of an inch below the top lip here, so probably right about there. I always, kind of rule of thumb for me, is I always just try to make the top surface of that float level with the top surface of your carburetor bowl right there. So anyway, let's get that fixed. Okay, it's probably kind of hard to see, but I've got it set now so that it's pretty much parallel with the rim of that bowl, but I did measure, and it is about 3/8 of an inch down in, so it's very, very close to 3/8 of an inch. Just used. I don't have any I think you can get tools and stuff, but I just use my little scale right here, and it is very accurate. So, okay, let's finish putting this thing back together. Everything is put back together. So I was reading in my manual when I was trying to figure out how high to set the float in this. And I was reading in my manual, and it was talking about a DLTX 72 carburetor, which this one is, versus a DLTX 71. They're both for late model A tractors, but one is for a gasoline tractor and the other one's for an all-fuel tractor. And as it turns out, so a 72 is for an all-fuel tractor, and I think probably the biggest difference is this right here. So the manual was telling me that a 72 has an economizer plug in it, and that's what this big brass plug is right here. This is the economizer plug. A 71 for a gasoline tractor, rather than an economizer plug, it has an economizer orifice. So either way, they're both going to be metering, you know, the correct amount of fuel, whether it's, you know, kerosene or whatever, in an all-fuel tractor into the carburetor versus gasoline. It uses that economizer orifice. I don't actually know if I was to take a tractor with a 72 carburetor on it, run it on the dyno, you know, running it on gasoline, switch it over to a 71, run it on gasoline. I don't know if you'd be able to tell any difference. That would be an interesting experiment if someone has ever done that before. But anyway, this is an all-fuel carburetor, and that old tractor, I mean, it's not going to be a big powerhouse anyway. So even if there was an advantage to running a 71, I mean, it's not even the right carburetor, so not a big deal. Anyway, let's go put this back onto the out in the garage, and we'll take it up and we'll put it on the tractor. Should work fine. Okay, now let's turn our attention to the Magneto. This is the Magneto that was on the tractor. It was a Wyco Model X or an XH1042 Magneto. It's probably my favorite style of Magneto that we have on these old Deeres. I like the way it looks, but more than that, they just seem to function well. They're really pretty simple to work on, and they work. The thing that's interesting about this is it is a long lug mag. These older tractors required a long lug Magneto, and just for comparison, this is same Magneto, but it's a short lug. So you can see that those lugs on the long one stick out about ½ an inch farther than the short lug Magnetos for the later tractors. So I'm glad that this is the Magneto that the tractor has, because it works well. It's easy to get parts for, and yeah, let's go ahead and let's throw it up on the tester. It should work just fine, but we'll see how consistent the spark is, and we'll also take the cover off and see what the inside of this looks like. This looks like it's a new cap, so we might have a new coil and new points and new condensers and stuff inside of that, so that'd be nice. Let me plug in these two guys right here. Okay, we're all hooked up. Let's check for the spark at impulse. So we should have spark in one of these two positions. Oh yeah, right there. That was a good strong spark. Right there, very good strong blue spark. So that's great. Let's go ahead and turn it on. Oh yeah, that's great. So this is the tachometer that I have hooked up to it. Shows that we're going at about 450 RPM. Let's see if we can turn it up. Just fantastic spark. Now let's try slowing it down.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna slow it down and we'll shut it down.
Here, let's pop this cap off real fast because I'm betting, based off of how well that spark is, I'm betting that we have some brand new components in here. Oh yeah, that's a brand new coil, I can tell. Look how clean this is in here. That's a brand new rotor. Looks like new points and new condenser too. So this is really strong. This is really good. So I think that's going to do it for today's video. I wish that we would have been able to have a little bit more time to go up to my dad's place and put the Magneto and the carburetor back on the tractor and hear it run, but we'll save that for the next video, and we'll do a little bit of carb tuning. My dad does a pretty good job with tuning a carburetor, and so we'll kind of go through that process because I think that's useful, and I think maybe it might help some people out. And maybe some people will comment and tell us some new things about how we could do things differently and maybe tune the carbs better. I don't know. It's a process. I appreciate people being interactive, and I appreciate your support. But that's going to do it for today. And we will see you guys next week with another video.